All right, so in this video, I'm going to do a quick comparison of a patch setup, comparing using Oscillator Slop control to give voice detuning per voice, as opposed to using the voice component modeling technique of setting specific offsets on a per voice basis, just to compare the sound. So this is a basic setup of a patch, just a couple of sawtooth oscillators, a little bit of shaping of a low pass filter and an amplifier, and there's no other modulation or LFOs going on here. These four slots are effectively off right now since the gated sequencer is off, but I'll be using these in a second to show the voice component modeling. So this first version, I'll just show with the version using Slop. I have Slop set to 30 here, which is a relatively high value for Slop, but this is going to give you a total amount of detuning offsets that's going to be about the same as what I'm going to show with the voice modeling techniques in a minute. So in this first example, what you should listen for is the motion within each voice and within each oscillator. There's going to be constant motion moving back and forth with all of the oscillators moving, one direction or another. There's this constant artificial motion. So go ahead and listen for that. All right, so as you can hear there's a lot of weird sort of dissonant stuff going on at various points. What's happening is for every note that I'm hitting, the two oscillators are moving back and forth based on this slop control. And so there's this constant motion and a ton of extra artificial motion and artificial phasing added into the process, which can create a lot of dissonance in areas. The oscillator slop control is one that also you'll never get the exact same performance when you load up a patch or power on the board or do anything. Basically, it's completely independent of all other LFO controls, and so it has non-standard behavior and will be different every time you play it. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off the oscillator slop and turn on the gated sequencer here. And in the gated sequencer, I've set this up for voice component modeling. And the method that I'm using here for detuning offsets is this top lane is set for oscillator 1 frequency through the modulation matrix. This one right here is set for oscillator 2 frequency. And I'm doing a note number modulator, moving the sequence 1, sequence 2, down to these two lanes using note number modulation to model an intonation offset up the keyboard. So this is the most common behavior that I analyzed, and I checked out a bunch of classic synths like the OBX, OBXA, CS80, Roland Jupiter 4, Jupiter 8, Memory Moog, a bunch of other really classic synths, and this is the most common behavior for detuning offsets on a per voice basis, is that they will, as you move up the keyboard, most of them that I tested will become more flat relative to the target note for the given key that you're hitting. And so what I'm doing here is I'm modeling on a voice by voice basis that behavior. And so here, let me go back here. I'm just going to set the fine tuning up about 17 here, which I know this will offset it. So the center of the keyboard is pretty much perfectly in tune, and there'll be a slight intonation offset going either direction. So here we're going to have the same notes all play, and there's going to be a large amount still of detuning offset, but it's going to be stable per voice and per oscillator. So listen to this now and see if you can hear the difference. Okay, so in that example, you'll hear a lot less dissonance than in the first example with the oscillator slop. And the reason being is that we're still having a very large amount of oscillator offsets in frequency on a per oscillator basis, but they are stable on a per voice and per oscillator basis. So we still have this phasing and detuning motion, but we're getting the more natural phasing, more natural detuning motion associated with just having set offsets for each voice and each oscillator within each voice. And this is much more realistic to if you actually analyze and take measurements from classic synthesizers. It's also much more realistic if you were to want to model a ensemble of violins or trumpets or any other sort of actual analog acoustic ensemble. Anyway, so that's sort of an overview, just to do a quick comparison of the oscillator slop control versus the voice component modeling technique of getting voice by voice variance. All right, have a good one.